Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Numbers. Again, our special edition of Talking Numbers. It's my Property Plus series. Look, we've had some fun over the last 3 episodes of this new series, and we're talking about property, everything to do with property. If you don't know my name, it's Paul Jansz, and if you're new to this, we hope you enjoy this episode, and you can actually go back and have a listen to our first 3 episodes. If you're not new to this, we hope you're enjoying the series because we've been talking about a lot of different things, from the common mistakes, from making sure you've got the right plan, to why and where if you want to invest, the ability to not get drawn in emotionally, the ability to not overpaying. Then we looked at some of the data around that. We've spoken about there's $9.95 trillion invested into the property market, residential property market. We've spoken about the pros and cons. We've spoken about rent vesting, where you can obviously rent where you want to live. I spoke about me living 200 meters away from all the amenities, restaurants opposite my school, and I invest elsewhere. So to me, that's about a lifestyle choice, 10 minutes from the city. Then we went into also about different things around housing markets. And we spoke about, we probably closed our last episode on one of the critical factors, which was around the value is in the land component and not in the building component. So there's a number of key elements there that hopefully, if you've been listening to our series, fantastic, and you've probably heard all that. If you haven't and you want to go back, it's there for you to go back and share with as many people as you like, because this is all about educating people about what to do, how to do it, and just a little bit of knowledge. So this series is brought to you by Virtual Financial and Jay Anderson Property. I have Jay Anderson. Welcome back to Talking Numbers, Jay.
Thanks, mate. And loving this series. A lot of fun.
It is a bit of fun, isn't it? It's good fun. And I love, look, the feedback is always, and we still continue to get it, that it's conversational. So we're not actually talking at anyone. We're just having a conversation about our own experiences. And the great thing from me is I get to hear and continually learn. And I'm a person that loves to continually learn. I'm a bit of a sponge, and things I don't know, you'll never know. And that's the great part about these podcasts and podcasts everywhere that we can bring, and that's the great part about it. Now, today, we're going to talk about I think how we left our last one was talking about the interstate markets. Mate, we also spoke about the last episode. I spoke about friends looking to invest on the Gold Coast and the ability to brought into emotional decisions, because as soon as I mentioned 2 better beach views under $1 million, bang, you went into, yep, that's an emotional decision. So let's look at interstate. Why should our market, our audience, be open to investing interstate?
I think it really comes down to opportunity. So I guess looking at interstate and just outside of your local area. So looking at interstate provides, I guess, opportunities to acquire a property within your budget that's a good investment and aligns with your personal circumstances, as opposed to trying to fit a square peg in a round hole in your local market. So what happens when I see DIY investors do this a lot is, let's say they go to their broker, they get a pre-approval for a loan. Let's say it's 800,000. They then, let's take Sydney as an example. Then they go, Sydney, 800,000. All of Sydney, what can I buy for 800,000? And then their budget is dictating the area that they buy in, and they're kind of just not making a decision based on what are the best buying opportunities, best locations up to 800,000, but rather what can I buy in this market for 800,000. So looking into state creates more opportunities, a bigger list of properties, and rather than you being forced into maybe subpar locations and stuff, subpar areas and properties within your local market. So I think it opens a lot more opportunities for an investor.
Yeah, interesting. And the you spoke about opportunity, you spoke about within the budget, and you also mentioned a good investment. Yeah, okay, if I break that down for a sec, to again, we may be touching on a few things that we spoke about in the first 3 episodes, but what makes a good investment?
Well, number one is, going back to the why. What are you trying to achieve with property? Is it capital growth? Is it long-term capital growth? Okay, well then the strategy needs to be, and the why and what you're trying to achieve needs to align with that goal. Is it cash flow? Is it a stepping stone into getting into principal place of residence sooner? Well, in that case, then we want what we call front-end capital growth. We want to see that capital growth happen sooner rather than later, rather than just buying a property that's going to do well over the next 30 years, buying in a market where we're likely to see that growth happen, in the shorter term. So it's really tying everything back to that why. What are you trying to achieve?
And you're right. There's no doubt about that. And we spoke about it in episode 1. What happens if you don't know? What's some of the things you could probably share to help people with that?
I think it's important to have this conversation. I think a lot of the time before you get your pre-approval, and the reason is once you know how much you've got to spend, just that excitement can trigger, and you start looking at what you can buy.
Yes.
Sit down, have that conversation, piece of paper. Why are we actually trying to buy a property? What are we doing it for? Are we doing it to build or create a bit of a legacy piece that we can pass down to kids? Is it, help us with wealth creation? Is it help us to fund our lifestyle or retirement later on? Like, why are we actually doing this? So it's important to sit down and write a bit of a list and kind of put all your thoughts together, and then talk to your professionals that are around you. Talk to your accountant, talk to a financial planner, talk to your loved ones, family, friends, even, if you're open to having those open conversations with them, and kind of just understand why you're doing it before you get that pre-approval, because that often the game changes as soon as you get that, when you've got money in, and then how much you got to spend.
It's a very, very, very good point. So again, just make sure look, and that's the great part about nowadays. We do have a lot of extended ability to find information, and while we all go sometimes to Google, it sometimes doesn't give us what we're looking for as well. So to be able to get that expert advice, and I mean expert. So if you're looking for something, if you, I don't know, I'm just trying to give an analogy of, we were talking about being a little bit sick the other day. So if you're feeling unwell, you're going to go to a doctor, aren't you?
Yeah.
So if you and they're going to ask you questions, and with those questions, they're going to diagnose what's wrong with you, and then they're going to give you hopefully some advice on what to do about that. To me, it's probably exactly the same as that. So if you're unsure about something, go and seek advice from an expert in the field.
You are spot on. And using the Google and that expert, analogy, it's, if you go to the doctor with your symptoms, they've got the experience, the knowledge, they can diagnose what it is and a treatment plan and all the rest of it. If you type those symptoms into Google, you're probably going to think you're dying. You've got some, rare African disease, or, who knows what it is. And you'll fall into this thing of what we call analysis paralysis, where you've got so much different information, conflicting information, you're actually more confused than when you actually started. So that expert advice is very, very important.
Okay, so let's continue the theme of looking at interstate as such. What is affordable to invest interstate? Give us some thoughts and ideas on that.
Yeah, I guess, using another case study of, clients that we've helped over the last few years, there's probably quite a few case studies that fall into this category. And I guess also my personal investment journey. Investing interstate enabled me and a number of clients to get into the market sooner, or continue to grow my property portfolio sooner, by opening up more affordable locations. So after my first property purchase, my own portfolio in Sydney, yes, I was looking for another one in Sydney, but what I ended up doing was then going interstate and buying 2 properties rather than 1 property. Okay. And then my third property I did interstate, which I wouldn't have been able to, I would have had to wait a couple more years before being able to do it in Sydney again. So I was able to grow a portfolio a lot faster by investing interstate as opposed to just the one capital city. So I guess take Sydney as an example. median house value as of December last year was 1.3 million. You compare that to, say, Adelaide, median house value 650,000.
Right.
So if you had a budget of 650,000, you wouldn't be able to buy a home in Sydney, but you might be able to buy a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe a 2-bedroom apartment in a handful of suburbs. So by looking interstate, you take your money to Adelaide or Brisbane or different markets, or even using that 1.3 million, you might be able to buy 2 properties in 2 different locations. So it certainly can be a lot more affordable, and it can create a lot more opportunities and different options and strategies that you can roll out.
Yeah, look, it's so true, and that sort of what you just went into there was probably just so invaluable. So let's go into timing on this. Good time to buy. When is a good time to buy interstate?
I think the first thing we need to remember is there's nearly 16,000 suburbs in Australia. So getting the right stage of the market cycle is crucial, but you just don't want to fall into that trap of trying to time the market perfectly, because as it is with the share market or anything else, we don't know when the peak of the market has been until it's passed. We don't know when the bottom of the market has been until it's passed. So trying to time it to the dot is not good and doesn't work. But getting into the right stage of that market, we want to be entering a market on the upswing. So imagine a clock. 12 o'clock is the peak of the market.
Yep.
6 o'clock is the bottom of the market. If we can enter, in between 6 and 9 o'clock, then we're going to get that, that upswing, that growth. We don't want to be entering a market at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
Yes.
Nor do we want to be entering at 11 or 12 o'clock. So getting into the right stage of the market is crucial. 16,000 suburbs around Australia. They're all in different stages of their market cycle, and so are individual states and local government areas. So in terms of, is it a good time to buy? The only thing that ever changes is where we're buying. So if I sat down with you today, Paul, and you said, I've got X amount to spend, where should I be investing my money? The list of suburbs that I would present to you today will be different to what I would have sent you 6 months ago, 12 months ago, because markets are changing, different market cycles.
Yes.
So it's not so much whether it's a good or bad time to buy, it's where does it make sense and where is it good buying right now at the moment.
That's a very good point. It's a very good point. And I suppose the challenge with interstate, I suppose, is, and we've spoken about this in previous episodes, is when we travel, whether it's Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, sometimes we go there and we're drawn into probably where we're staying sometimes, and there's often a sale or there's a high rise next door to it, and they're very good at selling that. Do you need to physically see the property before you buy it?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because this is probably a question we get asked a lot when it comes to investing interstate, or anyone even thinking about investing interstate. Yeah. And a couple of things. Number one, if you've got $1 million to spend on a property, as an example, using that Gold Coast property discussion, $1 million is a lot of money, right? So do you want to make sure that that $1 million is being invested in the best location for you, for your circumstances, and for that budget? Or do you want to buy something in your area or local, so you've got that convenience of going to inspect it? That's number one. Number two is, I always recommend that either yourself or an independent expert that you have engaged, an independent professional that is representing you and only you, inspect the property. So you either need to fly interstate or engage an independent professional to inspect the property for you. Why? We've all seen what we call creative real estate photography.
Yes.
Photoshopping, very creative, unique camera angles. Photos online are always going to be the good stuff. They're not going to show the big crack, the mold, the curtains that are falling down, the stained carpet. The photos are never going to show that. So it's really important, either yourself or a professional you've engaged, inspect the property. In addition to an inspection yourself, or by engaged professional buyer's agent or whatever it may be, it's also very, very strongly recommended to also have a building and pest inspection done.
Yes.
It's all good and well that you and I walk through the property and see that it all looks well and presents well. The building inspector is going to get into the roof cavity, going to get under the house. The pest inspector is going to check for any, termite activity or old termite working, stuff like that. It's the stuff that we can't see that building and pest inspection is going to show up. So we just want to make sure that there's no hidden nasties. So
yeah, 100%. And is that something that just going off track for a second in terms of people that are wanting to buy, in terms of subject to, so almost signing a contract subject to finance, subject to building and pest? Is that something just as a must?
It depends on the location. So if you try and buy a property in Sydney, or if you try and buy a property in the eastern suburbs in Sydney and say it's subject to finance, subject to building and pest, I think they would politely laugh at you. But
Really?
if you go buy a property in Queensland, subject to building and pest, subject to finance is a standard condition. Victoria, you can do it as well. So it really depends on the state and the market that you're buying at the individual market.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So for those that buy or choose to buy interstate, how do you then manage that property? Because there's a lot of on that, call it the property management side. A lot of people try and do it themselves, try and keep costs down. What's your recommendation and take on that?
So regardless of where the property is, even if it's 500 meters down the road or interstate, enlisting a good property manager is a crucial step for any property investor, regardless of the location. Getting a good property manager, they are worth their weight in gold. You need to research property managers, get recommendations, and treat your property managers well. They are the conduit between your property, the tenant, and you, and they are a very, very important role. They know that market. They know the laws, the regulations, the responsibilities. It's a crucial step. So regardless of where it is, and even more so interstate, being that it is further away, it's important to have a good property manager managing a property.
So what again, before I might delve a little bit deeper into the rules and regulations for a second soon, but what makes a good property manager? Because I've had different property managers that looked after mine, but I couldn't tell you what's good and what's poor, to be honest with you. So what makes a good property manager?
Communication and proactiveness would be my two big things. So I want a property manager who's proactively checking in with the tenant on the property, doing all the inspections when they're due. Huge catalog of photos of the property, so we can see the condition when the tenant moved in, the condition during inspections. Zero tolerance on rent arrears, and they just need to be really good with communication and proactive with things, rather than just being a messenger of saying, "Hey, the tenant has said there's a leaking tap in the laundry. What would you like to do?"
Yes.
Or the hot water system's gone. Okay, that's great. I would rather the property manager go, "Hey, Jay, 123 Smith Street, hot water system's gone. I've already got 3 quotes obtained for you. XYZ Plumbing said they'll do it for this amount, which seems to be the cheapest. They're recommended. We used them before, and they can do it on Monday."
Brilliant.
That's what I want from a property manager.
Yeah,
and
brilliant. So again, just to touch on that, I've got no doubt that I've dealt with both. So it is interesting, isn't it, in terms of and you look, obviously different percentages depending on where you got your property as well in terms of what they take as a percentage. So being really clear, if you're not getting that at the moment and you've got an investment property, it's a good time to review it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And have that conversation with your property manager in the beginning. Set your expectations. What are your expectations from them? And can they work that way? And the other really good question to ask is, how many properties do they personally manage? Because if you've got a property manager that's looking after 150, 180 properties, that's tough.
That's a lot. Yeah,
that is a lot.
They couldn't possibly communicate on all of those to all those landlords,
and you can't be proactive. So
that's right.
It's so it's important having that conversation before you even engage a property manager.
That's a great piece of advice. Let's get into that rules and regulations that you spoke about before. So I'm sure there's different rules and regulations for investing interstate. What's some of the things that investors should be aware of?
Yeah, each state is different in terms of legal requirements, taxes, land tax, stamp duty, various concessions, and even restrictions. So it's important that any professional advice you're engaging, you've got to make sure they're actually experienced in that state where you're purchasing. So something that I see happen quite a bit is, let's say, using Sydney as an example again, family in Sydney, got a home in Sydney. They used a conveyancer solicitor for the purchase of their home in Sydney. Now they're thinking about buying an investment property in Perth.
Right.
They've used that solicitor before. Solicitor said, "Yeah, I can help you with it." Really, he hasn't done much in Perth at all. So my recommendation is always using a professional either in that state or very experienced in that state, because there's different rules, regulations, different processes, the way things work. So it's really important that you're across it from, I guess, a conveyancing legal point of view, someone that understands the purchase process. Like we said, doing an offer subject to finance or building a pest. If you were from Queensland or Victoria and trying to buy a property in Sydney and you made an offer subject to finance, there's no chance that, that agent's going to either present it to the owner or the owner's even going to consider it. If you thought that was the normal way of buying a property. So you need that advice on understanding the different rules and regulations and processes in each individual state.
That's just invaluable type of advice there, because I would not have even thought about that. You're right. It's our scenario. You go back to who you know and who you've dealt with in the past to try and take care of your next property as such. But if they don't have the expertise in that state, because there's so many different rules, regulations, they don't know. Again, what they don't know, they don't know.
Yep. Spot on.
Brilliant, mate. Great piece of advice there as well to anyone listening. Jay, as we look to wrap up this next episode, tell us a little bit about what's coming. So we've probably got through, I think this is episode number 4 from memory. We've been talking about interstate in terms of our Talking Numbers Property Plus podcast. Tell us what's next. What are we going to be going down the journey of?
Yeah, so I think next episode, we might talk about starting your investment journey. What are the things to consider before even buying an investment property? What sort of costs are involved? When, where, why, and what you should be looking at buying. So yeah, a bit of an insight into and a bit of a deep dive into what to look at when starting your property investment journey.
Love it. I started mine probably 20 years ago, but there's no reason why I can't start the mindset of re-looking at all of that. And I've already started to think about all the different things that I've been writing down in terms of just going back to the simple why. What's my why? What am I doing this for? So, mate, brilliant. Loved obviously chatting to you again. To all of you that have joined us, we hope you enjoyed this episode as we looked at the interstate side of things. And again, the little tidbits that Jay's been able to share, again, his knowledge, his experience is outstanding. So I hope you take this away, go back, re-listen to it. That's probably the way that I learn. I tend to listen to it again and then I take notes while I'm listening to it. So therefore it sinks into my little brain a little bit more, but that's just how I learn. So hopefully you've enjoyed this next episode of Talking Numbers Plus and look forward to bringing you the next one. Jay, enjoy the rest of your day and I'll talk to you soon.